Deepu raced to the window and peered out. Their street was quiet at the best of times, and today, a Saturday night, was even gloomier. It was a by-lane tucked well away from the main road and lined with a row of low, crumbling houses, much like their own. The road was as sleepy as the rest of the neighborhood. It looped lazily around the park, skulked past a shabby old commercial center, a typing school and the post office, then curled up for a long nap in a shabby back lane tucked behind the senior citizens' reading room. It had rained earlier. Puddles of water glistened on the road. In the distance, Deepu heard the lonely whistle of the beat constable making his rounds on the street around the park. Whee! The cuckoo clock in the living room whooped and hiccuped 9 times. His tummy growled in reply. Deepu's, not the beat constables or the cuckoos. Deepu glanced at the dinner table, wondering what new torture disguised as food waited for him there. Then he looked out at his grandmother boing, boing, boinging across the garden and over the fence. Dinner would have to wait. He shut the window carefully. Hadn't Mummy said something about burglars? He slipped on his shoes, grabbed the spare house keys, closed the front door firmly behind him, and the front gate after that. Nani could leap over fences and fly through windows now, but if he tried, he knew he'd still be dangling from the fence by the pants when Mummy and Papa came home. Nani had shrunk into a doll-sized figure in the distance, flitting between the shadows in the park across the street. He raced after her, slipping and sliding on patches of wet grass and sloshing through patches of mud. Nani, he called as she swung herself from one tire swing in the kiddies' lot to the other and over the climbing frame. She didn't reply. Nani, he yelled, zigzagging around the covered benches where Nani sat and gossiped every evening with her friends. Nani didn't slow down as she leapfrogged from one bench to the other, then backflipped into the shadows of the trees beyond. Nani! He hollered across the pebbled courtyard where the senior citizens' laughter club met every morning to ha ha ha, hoo hoo hoo, themselves to good health and on to the neighborhood's nerves. He raced after Nani as she cartwheeled across the paving stones and whomp, ran right into her, standing as still as a statue. There, she said, pointing. Sounds of distress. Deepu looked where she was pointing. Up in that tree? Yes, Nani said, her eyes blazing. My ninja senses don't lie. Then she looked a little confused. I think, she added. With a loud hoi, Nani ran straight at the tree, right up its gnarled and twisted trunk and into the mass of wet leaves and shadows above. Leaves shook, twigs shivered down, branches creaked. As Deepu watched, the creaks grew louder, the leaves shivered harder, and the twigs practically rained down around him. There you are, Deepu heard Nani say. Come on, don't be afraid. Nani came crashing out of the tree, landed in a heap, and then began hopping across the grass. Aye! She crooned as she hopped. Wow, Deepu thought. Nani was so happy about rescuing someone, she was singing and dancing. Then he realized what the words of her song were. Ow, 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 get off, she yelled, running around in circles, waving her arms about. That's when she saw it. A dark huddled shape firmly attached to her head. As he watched, it hissed, leaped off her head, and zipped past his legs. Deepu got a blurred glimpse of whiskers and a furry tail as he dived out of the way. Meow! Snarled the person in distress and disappeared into the hedge. Nani grunted, gingerly feeling her head. Silly thing! Didn't know how to get down. I told her to stay calm, but would she listen? Then she laughed. Reminds me of the time I was chased up a tree by an angry Himalayan bear. Ha! The ninja dragon was never chased up a tree by a bear. I've seen every episode. Not the ninja dragon, silly. I was. Huh? When did that happen? When I went trekking in Tibet, of course, ages ago when your mother was even younger than you are now. Deepu stared at Nani. Close your mouth, boy, she said. You might swap. What's that noise? My stomach, I guess. He blushed. I'm starving, Nani. Let's go home. No, shh, she whispered. Something's coming. Listen. Shadows lay like blankets across the jogging path and under the trees. The lights along the path were doing absolutely nothing useful. The tired yellow glow only made the shadows seem darker and deeper. A few feet away was the lotus pond, an oversized puddle of smelly water that Mummy was always warning Deepu to stay away from. It looked very mysterious now, like a sheet of dark glass, if you could ignore the dark mounds of rubbish floating in it. He half expected a prehistoric monster to rear its neck up through the surface and bellow at the moon. It would have been a very small monster, of course, as the pond wasn't very big. Also a really short one. The pond was only about a foot deep. He knew because he had fallen in last year. Deepu listened to the drip, drip of the raindrops diving off the trees into the pond, to the creak, creak of grasshoppers performing their version of the latest insect world chart busters, to the croak, croak of the frogs singing back, to the blood-curdling growls of the monster that leaped out of the shadows that instant and tried to eat him.